There are people who mean well, and then there are people who do well. As the Torah says, the mitzvah is not in heaven. The mitzvah is very near to you, that you may do it. Art Jacknowitz was a man who did what he believed, a star in his profession, a pillar of his community, generous with kith and kin, charities, and museums. Art Jacknowitz was a mensch. He was born in Brooklyn before it was cool. During World War II, his father was away at the front and didn't set eyes on baby Arthur for over a year. Art had a kid brother, Mel. When Art's peer group wanted to bar the little one from the ball game, Art loyally insisted on including his sibling. When they moved to a new neighborhood, Art and Mel stood on the sidewalk, throwing a football back and forth. One by one, the boys on the block came down and joined them. Art was a zealous student at Brooklyn's elite Stuyvesant High School. He toiled long and hard over his homework. Art was left-handed, but determined to write as neatly as possible, using a ruler to keep his lines straight. All his life, Art boasted about Stuyvesant High School's famous alumni, actors and scientists and politicians. But he had better penmanship than any of them. There are a few blemishes on Art's youthful record. He got blind drunk at Mel's bar mitzvah, egged on by cousins who kept plying him with Manischewitz. His high school was all male, but they used to peek in the locker room windows of the adjacent nursing school. And with his classmates, he booed their unpopular principal on graduation day. The ceremony was canceled, and Art's father was furious. He'd taken the time off work to attend. In spite of these scandals, Art excelled at Brooklyn College of Pharmacy. Mel went to City College and met a girl, Linda Kroll, who seemed ideal for Art. Art took Linda to a party at his school, and she was amazed he could dance. They also liked the same music and the same movies. He went to Buffalo for graduate school, but her family could tell when Art called because he made her laugh so hard. She got pinned on her Thanksgiving visit, and they were married the following summer. Linda took a couple of crummy jobs in Buffalo, and then Art persuaded her to go to library school. Pennsylvania was their next adventure. Art went to the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science, where he received a Doctor of Pharmacy as opposed to a PhD. That was something new. They came to Morgantown in 1974 when he entered the faculty of WVU's School of Pharmacy. Here, too, he encouraged Linda to pursue a degree in public administration. He was thrilled with her achievements, proud to be Mr. Linda Jacknowitz. Art was a great developer of talent, getting pupils into pharmacy or technical fields who might not otherwise have done it. Folks who didn't think they were science types, often women or foreign students. In his final illness, the letters and gifts and favors poured in from his colleagues and devotees. He measured his own success by the accomplishments of his proteges. It's called leadership through nachas. Even beyond the academy, Art had an instinct for helping others, the perfect gesture at the perfect moment, good advice in a jam. Look at the person on your right, the person on your left, the person ahead of you, and the person behind you. At least one of those four individuals came to Art Jacknowitz in a crisis. And they're here today, so I guess he didn't completely blow it. Art and Linda were travelers. They went to Israel 6 times, also Europe, Asia, Australia, the Galapagos, and they toured the home front too. Art was a fiend for politics and current events. He loved this country. He and Linda visited lots of American cities you may not think of as hot spots, but there's something to see everywhere. Art was also a shopper, mad about sales and coupons and flyers. He collected stuff, teapots, mortars and pestles, Judaica. He'd buy anything made in Israel or Brooklyn. This weekend, we celebrate Shavuot, God giving us the commandments at Mount Sinai. If it's a commandment to be a devoted son and brother and husband, Art Jacknowitz fulfilled it. If it's a commandment to be a dedicated scholar inhaling every crumb of learning, Art Jacknowitz fulfilled it. If it's a commandment to be a much acclaimed and celebrated pharmacy professor, Art Jacknowitz fulfilled it. If it's a commandment to be a cherished mentor to one's acolytes, Art Jacknowitz fulfilled it. If it's a commandment to be a thrifty consumer, a fervent bargain hunter, Art Jacknowitz fulfilled it. If it's a commandment to be a president of the synagogue, Art Jacknowitz fulfilled it. He was all these things, and also a friend to every stranger, an asset to every team, a ray of sunshine in every gathering. Art Jacknowitz was just like Mount Sinai, imposing, inescapable, indispensable. How grateful we are to remember him.
I am Mel Jacknowitz, last name which may sound familiar. I am Art's brother, and that is a title of which I am exceedingly proud. I'm going to go off script for a second because I do want to comment. I too was past president of my synagogue at one point. And one of the things I've learned, and I forgot, is never talk to the rabbi about what you're going to speak about. So you're gonna have to bear with me on that. As most of you know, Art was a kind, sweet man that always had time for you, always made you laugh, was always there to listen and advise and encourage to do your best. I know this because I had the honor and wonderful good fortune of being his baby brother. Truly, from my earliest memories, I recall him looking after me, protecting me, which of course I never appreciated as a child. When our mom would send us out to play, as we did in those days, get out of the house, right? And his friends were outside and mine were nowhere to be seen on that occasion. He would make sure to include me. That's a big brother, you know, even in the face of all his friends saying, leave the kid alone, you know, let's just go. He wouldn't do that. Art, as was mentioned, Art was selected to attend Stuyvesant High School in New York. And that's, for those of you who don't know, it's the elite high school in the entire city. although I was corrected by a Brooklyn Tech alumna who may be here again, who said, well, it's one of the elite schools. But it is the elite school. So, and you need to take a rigorous exam to get into that, be required for admission, and he aced that exam. And our parents were extremely proud. And even his pain in the butt brother was proud of me, and was really impressed. The principal of Stuyvesant High School was a well-known, miserable tyrant. Certainly unknown type of person to anybody here, right? Any kind of educator. And all the students really hated him. When graduation was held, and I was 12 years old at that time, I checked that. And it was held in a beautiful old movie theater. You know, one of those old movie theaters, gorgeous theater, beautiful building. I very vivid memory of this. And the principal was announced. In those days, it was all male. Those days are long behind us, but it was an all-male school. And the graduating class just booed him like you wouldn't believe. And in response, among other things he said, was, I'm here to give out the diplomas, which some of you deserve. Which, needless to say, got booing incredibly more loud. And at which point the principal at that point said, that's it. Graduation is canceled. And he stormed off the stage. Now this was in 1960. 1960, all right? That was well before, and maybe even the precursor of the student protests of later years, much later years, within 65, 66, that's when you had those student protests. So, in fact, this was so unusual that it made the front page of the New York Times. It really did, and just don't doubt it, I actually went to archives, and I have the front page of the New York Times. You imagine today, if a teacher was booed, that would make the front page of the New York? I don't think so. Anyway, sitting in the audience, I was in awe. My 12-year-old self was in awe of Art and his classmates standing up to this awful tyrant. My father, however, was not amused. My father was a pharmacist and had his own pharmacy, neighborhood pharmacy. And he had 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you all know that. But for this occasion, he closed the pharmacy, which was truly unheard of. I think he closed his pharmacy on Yom Kippur, and that was it, other than that. So this was a major occasion for him to attend the ceremony, and he was not happy. He was not a happy camper. He was there to see his son, parade, get that diploma. Did not happen. And in fact, he was so furious. I remember the old Buick sitting in the back seat, and he was just living. He was a careful driver up to that day. And he was so furious. There were police officers directing traffic. Traffic police was right in front of the movie theater where the graduation was being held. And he actually clipped one of the traffic cops, nearly knocking him down. Now, as a 12-year-old, I really don't remember what happened thereafter, but he never did go to prison, so I'm assuming nothing happened further. Anyway, Art eventually got his diploma, and he went on to college and to graduate school, where at points it was not easy for him, especially in graduate school. And but I know he worked very hard, and he extremely studious student, unlike his baby brother. And after a great deal of struggle and adversity, both in college and in graduate school, as was pointed out, he persevered to become an incredibly successful and much beloved professor, advisor, mentor, and colleague. And as is evidenced by the manifold postings on the School of Pharmacy Facebook page, which commented on the death notice. And to those of you who have not done it, I would imagine most of you have, I really urge you to go to that Facebook page. And I'm told just today that it continues. I didn't realize. And read some of the scores of testaments to Art, extolling his kindness, his ability to listen and to guide, and how so many, many people have been profoundly touched by him. In addition to his teaching and mentoring, Art authored and co-authored over 100 scientific and technical articles. He would always send me a copy of these articles. Now, I'm an attorney. I guess I don't have to finish that sentence. And so I would really, honest to God, I would really try to read those articles. And yeah, I'm not, I can read, legal documents, but and I was always impressed. I knew there was something there. I could tell there was something there. And I told him so. I said, these are great articles. And thank goodness he rarely asked follow-up questions. He knew better. He knew better, right? Yeah, he could see through me. Art was the kind of guy that always knew the right thing to do and did it. He really did. When Abby, our beautiful 30-year-old daughter, was taken from us due to cancer, Art and Linda, knew just how to memorialize her. You see, she was an elementary school teacher, a special ed teacher, skilled photographer, and a lover of all the arts. And she was able to incorporate that in successfully reaching her special ed students. So what did Art do? Art and Linda established the Abby Robin Jacknowitz Travel Fund here at the Art Museum. We're an elementary school children from rural West Virginia who have never seen an art museum, wouldn't know an art museum from an outhouse, I think, are able to come and have their horizons broadened and be exposed to the world of fine art. And I had the great pleasure of last year, I think it was, of being here when a small class, a class of small children, I guess first graders, were at the Art Museum. And to see their joy and how the art was explained to them. I was watching Heather, who's in charge over there, work with them. And to see the excitement and awe, the eyes, I can't make my eyes up there, of the children, was wonderful. And Art knew that was going to do it. Well, all too quickly, Art's illness came upon him like a vicious cyclone, swooping down and destroying his physical abilities, his laugh, and eventually even his ability to communicate. In face of this awful calamity, his community, his friends, neighbors, colleagues, former students, all rallied. All rallied to his side as I have never seen before. If prayer alone could have turned the tide of this awful scourge, Art would be with us still. For the prayers that rose for him were Catholic, Jewish, Methodist, Lutheran, Baptist, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Episcopalian, and even, I'm told, believers in Crystal Power. And from 30 different states, as well as Switzerland, Kenya, Turkey, Jordan, and Israel. Amongst Art's greatest loves, besides his beloved wife, Linda, were his well-known love of travel and being a rabid fan of mountaineer sports. How fitting, then, that his last abode in that Ruby Memorial Hospital hospice room faced, truly, faced the Mountaineer football stadium. A big, huge window. And the room number was 727, ready to jet him off to his final destination, first class. It is customary for Jews in consoling mourners, check me on this one, to wish that the deceased's memory be for a blessing. And that's how you would greet someone who's mourning. So many times, it's merely a phrase, you know, and a hope. May his memory be for a blessing. Sort of like a rote kind of statement. But today, for Professor Dr. Art Jacknowitz, my big brother, it's neither a mere phrase nor a hope. It is simply a fact. Because his memory is and will remain a blessing.
Good afternoon. I'm Patty Johnston. I'm a 1977 graduate of the WVU School of Pharmacy. Today we come together to celebrate a wonderful person known for his kindness, generosity, intelligence, his love of all things WVU, but most importantly, his love and devotion to his family and friends. We have heard from so many of our fellow alums who have reached out with warm sentiments about Art Jacknowitz. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to reflect on what Art meant to you. But due to time constraints today, we won't be able to share each of those individually. Linda will receive a copy of those to read later at a later date. Art Jacknowitz and I both started West Virginia University School of Pharmacy in 1974. I do have a picture of myself, and I thought in fairness, I would include it because it makes Art look really, really good. I too had dark hair in 1974. There was one subtle difference though. Art was an assistant professor, and I was a first-year pharmacy student. Art was the new guy on the faculty, young, engaging, friendly, and enthusiastic. He taught our class about drug information. Our big assignment was to write a paper about a drug and specific indications. He stressed how important it was to narrow our focus significantly enough to be able to shed some light on a lesser known aspect of the drug. I tried to apply that principle this afternoon when preparing remarks about Art. But knowing that Art is as well known as penicillin is to a first-year pharmacy student, I tried to narrow my focus to what he and our friendship meant to me. Art and I bonded early about photography. My last year of pharmacy school, I purchased my first 35mm camera. Art and Linda became frequent subjects. He would always protest at first before flashing his winning smile for the camera. I spent a lot of time and money at Superior Photo, buying equipment, film, and having it processed. When I graduated, Art, with his usual dry sense of humor, told my parents that Superior Photo had begun flying their flag at half-mast when they learned I was graduating. Over the years, Art and I always stayed in touch, whether he was congratulating me on some personal or professional milestone, or just to say hello. He and Linda became some of our closest and dearest friends. We traveled together, attended pharmacy meetings, and enjoyed WVU sporting events. Linda and Art became part of our family and spent Thanksgivings, 4th of July's, WVU bowl games, graduations, colony drug events, engagements, and retirement parties together. We even celebrated Thanksgiving together, that rare occurrence when Thanksgiving and Hanukkah occur on the same day. And you can see a picture of that in the center there. Art always made a special effort to meet everyone at each of these events and learn something about him. Anyone 15 or above was viewed as Art as a potential WVU recruit. If they were interested in science, even better, here comes the WVU School of Pharmacy sales pitch. Not just the sales pitch, but the follow-through, the business card, the email, and the promise to do anything he could to help that young person navigate the waters at WVU. I know for certain he changed the college choice of one of our neighbors. Her parents were firmly convinced that WVU was a total party school. That is, until they had a long conversation with Art. Now she is a proud graduate of the WVU School of Pharmacy, all thanks to that smooth-talking Art Jacknowitz. When our daughter Katie was in the 10th grade and began to think about colleges, Art was right there to begin the WVU lobbying. At the time, she was interested in creative arts, so he put her in touch with the dean of the Creative Arts Center, who began a correspondence with her, sending her information and offering tours or anything else he might do to help her. But alas, Katie would choose pharmacy, and who would be her advisor in the honors program but Art? And how nice it was that Art and his wife, Linda, would provide room and board to her parents when they visited her. Katie was the third generation of WVU School of Pharmacy graduates in our family to be impacted by Art. My dad, Harold Johnston, class of 1951, never missed a CE presentation by Art Jacknowitz. Traveling was many of our many common interests. One of our greatest adventures with Art and Linda was our RV trip to Alaska in 2010. If you want to find 4 people who are least likely to be found roughing it, that would have been Art, Linda, Larry, and me. Our mutual good friends, Sheila and Gary Gibbons from the WVU School of Pharmacy, class of 1976, persuaded them to join us in Alaska for an 8-day RV adventure. They promised they would do all the planning, and Gary would do anything requiring rubber gloves. Sheila and Gary had their own RVs, so the Jacknowitzes, Larry and I, rented one ourselves. After watching a 20-minute video on how to drive an RV, we took to the road. Make that Linda and I took to the road. While Larry and Art sat at the table in the back, reading, making each other laugh, and gawking out the window. Linda had decided at that time that we would not let them drive, even if they asked, which they didn't. Linda and I took turns being pilot and co-pilot. While Linda sang and translated popular songs into Yiddish to keep me amused, we laughed and laughed the whole trip and had the most amazing time. Many years later, we are still marveling at the fact we could be cooped up together in a small RV for 8 days and remain friends without a single disagreement. We had many other wonderful trips together. The Grand Canyon, Capitol Reef, Sedona, and Page, Arizona, Death Valley National Park, Monument Valley, Las Vegas, and dozens of other beautiful and fascinating places. Each one the source of much laughter and inside jokes that have stayed with us for many years. In each of these magnificent places, we would each take hundreds of pictures. Art and I had two entirely different approaches. He tried to get every human being out of his viewfinder, while I found this less of a problem. The only exception he made was for his beloved Linda, who was always encouraged to jump in the picture. On our travels, Art loved to search out WVU School of Pharmacy alums in the area. From Fred Meyer Pharmacy in Anchorage, Alaska, to Kroger Pharmacy in Beckley, Art was always greeted with an enthusiastic, "Oh my gosh, Dr. Jacknowitz, is that you?" There was one exception. One day, we were on a big adventure in Monroe County. Art and I decided we'd go in the pharmacy and see if we knew the pharmacist. Art handed his business card to the technician and asked her to give it to the pharmacist. In a few minutes, out storms a very irate pharmacist who says she did not get into WVU. She hates WVU. She's getting along very well without WVU or anyone from WVU. The first, the last, and the only time I ever saw Art Jacknowitz speechless. Linda and Art are well known for their generosity through the WVU Foundation, local charities, their synagogue, and so many worthy causes. Just because he was generous didn't mean that Art didn't love a good bargain, a trait both Mel and the rabbi have mentioned. And he shared that trait with my husband, Larry. They had many discussions on some of their deals at Big Lots and Gabe's, what to buy at Aldi's, and whether there really was a difference in cereal and jelly made in Croatia. I will never forget how excited Art was when we were visiting the Ethel chocolate factory, and he insisted on buying us all big chocolate-covered marshmallows, and his delight in discovering that they were day old when we got them for half price. Art was the epitome of a lifelong learner. He was fascinated by travel, politics, art, people, and all things West Virginia. No one loved an obscure museum like the Borax Museum, the Hoover Dam Workers Museum, or the Jimmy Stewart Museum more than Art. After his retirement, Art became involved with the WVU Art Museum. He studied the 6-inch binders full of artists and their work, painstakingly adding his notes and additional research to the pages. He introduced us to Blanche Lazelle, Shepard Fairey, and Appalachian folk artists whose works filled the galleries. He took great delight in sharing this passion with art with others, so much so that, as Mel mentioned, he established an endowment to allow West Virginia school children to have the opportunity to visit maybe their only art museum ever. Everyone who knew Art knew he was a man of many connections and great persistence. If he wanted something to happen for someone, he would keep after the people involved until it happened. I was the recipient of the results of this many, many times as he advocated on my behalf. For many years, Larry and I had terrible top-of-the-bowl season football tickets. Art would call us at halftime if the people around them had left so we could come down and join them. One year, Art decided it was time for us to make a move beside them. Art visited his friends in the athletic department ticket office many, many, many times. Finally, it was a done deal, and we spent several years enjoying Mountaineer football beside Linda, Art, and Art's headphones. What else can I say about a man who was my teacher, mentor, colleague, travel buddy, and most importantly, my dear friend for almost 45 years? He was a brilliant man with a gift of gab, excellent recall, a West Virginian through and through, who loved life and those in his life. I could go on and on about Art and what he meant to me, memories full of laughter and good fun. What more can any of us ask in life than to be loved and cherished by those around us? In Art's life, that was the case. When looking back at Art's 75 years on Earth, the great Navajo sage, Lawson Homer, would have to say, it all turned out pretty good. As Art's final days with us approached, Linda, Larry, and I gathered around his bedside and tried to cheer him with a song we often sang when we gathered with friends. You probably learned it like I did in kindergarten. I will spare you today and not sing the song, but the words go like this. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold. A circle's round, it never ends. That's how long I'm going to be your friend. As I look out over the audience today, I see many of Art's gold and silver friends that he collected over a lifetime of being important to so many people. My best friend since kindergarten, Linda Arnold, a syndicated columnist and motivational speaker, often says we all need the 3 B's in our lives. We all want something to believe, we all want to believe in something, to belong to something, and be loved. Art Jacknowitz taught us to believe in ourselves and to belong to the great institution of West Virginia University, and particularly the School of Pharmacy. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I can look out here and see and feel the love today. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Kent Hunter, a graduate of the class of 1984. I'm sincerely honored to be here today to represent the sentiments of the decade of the 1980s. Our decade of graduates was fortunate to experience Dr. Jacknowitz in his earlier teaching years. Those were the days that he enhanced his lectures with the use of the slide projector. That monster machine that with the carousel of slides that he continued to use for, I think, almost all of his teaching career. I distinctly remember when Dr. J, that's what we called him, let us know that he and his wife, whom we had not yet met, were from New York City, specifically Brooklyn. Because I had grown up in Morgantown, I was certain that he wouldn't last long in the mountains of West Virginia. Quite a different world compared to Brooklyn. Obviously, if that had been one of his test questions, I would have gotten it wrong. I also remember Dr. Jacknowitz's pharmacy references class, where we learned about the many clinical resources that were available to pharmacists once we began to practice pharmacy. I can still hear him say that he wanted to give us some appreciation of the PDR. He said those words several times, give us some appreciation of the PDR, because he definitely didn't care for that reference. Clearly, 35 years later, I still remember what he taught me. At some point after graduation, Dr. Jacknowitz crossed the area from that of professor to that of friend. I'm not clear on when that actually happened for me because, like for others, he had made himself available as a mentor by providing guidance during pharmacy school. But I think he moved to the friend zone around the time that he began to encourage me to call him Art instead of Dr. J. Now, today, I want to give you some appreciation of the sentiments that other 80s alums wrote about Art. Dave Bowyer, my classmate from 1984, has said that Art was always a great influence, but the time which impacted him the most was when he was considering entering academia. Dave was rather late in his career, and this would be a significant career change. He really doubted his ability to connect with the students. Dave got in touch with Art and asked him what he thought. Art was positive, as always, and convinced Dave this would be a good move for both him personally and him professionally. Art had no hesitations about Dave's ability to connect with the students. Dave has now been in academia for almost 15 years and is associate professor and chair in the Department of Pharmacy Practice at the University of Charleston. Dave always felt that Art treated everyone with respect, but held people accountable for their actions. So Dave has always tried to model his actions in academia after Art and will continue to do so in the future. Dave adds that Art and Linda were great role models regarding their love for each other as well as their love of life. Dave always looked for Art and Linda on televised WVU home basketball games, and watching those home basketball games won't be the same now. Paula Calvert Bass, also of the class of 1984 along with Dave and me, continues the sentiment by adding these words. Besides being a mentor to me while I was in pharmacy school, Art has always been there to provide guidance. When my mom had rheumatoid arthritis, he helped me to identify a rheumatologist for her. I was living in California and helping her from there, and his help was really crucial. Her illness was very complicated. Her immune system eventually attacked the connective tissue in her lungs, and she passed away. Art somehow found out, and to my surprise, he came to the funeral home in my little hometown of Kingwood, West Virginia. That meant the world to me. He continued to be a resource for me when my father developed Parkinson's. Art was just a wonderful, loving, and giving person. He will be missed. George Lucas, class of 1982, now an attorney in Cleveland, Ohio, by way of Weirton, West by God, Virginia, those are his words, wrote, Dr. Jacknowitz supported my application to law school by writing a recommendation on my behalf. Today, I have a law practice in Cleveland, Ohio, and have combined my pharmacy and law degrees by representing families who have lost loved ones to wrongful death from prescription opiate overdoses, including Prince the singer. I mention this only because I read that Dr. Jacknowitz was receiving treatment here at the Cleveland Clinic, and I reached out to him. We had a chance to talk over the telephone after many decades, at which point I had the wonderful opportunity to thank him for his help and guidance. I brought him up to date on my career and offered assistance while he was at the clinic. Of course, he said that he had all he needed and he was grateful to hear from me. I did not know that we were about to lose him, and that is a reflection of his selfless giving to so many others. Karen Alice Petros and Bill Petros, whose names you may recognize, both graduated from the School of Pharmacy in 1983. They submitted these words. Art was a lifelong confidant to us, but it all started with him working with 5 of us from the class of 1983, who he saw as potential leaders in clinical and administrative pharmacy. He initially provided counseling to us on the benefits of residencies, a relatively new concept in pharmacy and not even available at WVU in the early 80s. He went on to help with our selection of places to interview. All 5 of us completed residencies, and 4 went on to PharmD degrees with subsequent leadership careers in academia, institutional pharmacy, and the pharmaceutical industry. Art was always there to help guide career decisions, commiserate in downtimes, and celebrate our successes. Janet Block Toth, from the class of 1980, wrote these words. When I was in pharmacy school, I developed a strong fondness for Art and a respect for him. I was truly blessed that many years after I graduated, Art and Linda became my dear friends. Art had a gift for remembering his students and their personal stories. As a result, he always made me feel important and valued, and I knew he would assist with anything I requested. It was only after he passed away that I realized he must have made everyone feel this way because I heard the same story from so many others. It was through Art that I've developed what will be a lifelong relationship with the WVU School of Pharmacy. As I look back on my friendship with Art, my strongest memories are of the many ways he gave back to the school and his community and supported causes that were important to him. Art led by example. His quiet demeanor and sense of humor were reassuring and comforting. As I enter a new phase of my life, I look forward to promoting Art's legacy by giving back and remembering Art's passion for life. I am a better person for having known Art. With Art's influence, Jan and I were inducted into the School of Pharmacy's Hall of Fame. Yet Art seems to always have a genuine interest in the students and the graduates. As for me, Art advised me over the years on my career path, which took me from retail pharmacy through hospital, home infusion, and long-term care. I ultimately landed in a medical director's position in the pharmaceutical industry, where I've been for the last 18.5 years. Because of the variety of pharmacy practice that I've experienced, Art put me in front of countless pharmacy students so that they could hear about my journey and maybe think about an area of pharmacy practice that they hadn't considered. Or maybe it was so that they would know that if the practice area they found themselves in wasn't a good fit, it would be okay to explore until they found something that was a better fit. At any rate, he wanted me to tell my story in the spirit of sharing in order to help the students. Art was extremely helpful to me when I considered going back to school in my 40s to earn an advanced degree. I wasn't sure if I could or even should go back to school while working. Of course, he would encourage me to go back to school. After all, he was a professor. But he went even further and became my clinical preceptor here while I earned my PharmD degree through another school, the University of Florida's College of Pharmacy. But even with all that, I think it was the respect that Art always showed to me that gave me the confidence to pursue opportunities that I would never have otherwise considered. The fact that he was a professor, coupled with his ability to provide good career and life guidance, weren't the only sides to him. He was, simply put, a great friend. We would attend Pirates baseball games, Washington Wild Things baseball games, and West Virginia Black Bears baseball games. We would meet periodically just to visit, to swap travel stories, talk about our fruit trees, and catch up on the latest. He and Linda would sometimes come to my house for New Year's Eve parties, but due to their popularity, they usually had so many other places to make an appearance during the evening that they couldn't stay until the clock struck midnight. I mentioned already that I grew up in Morgantown, so my family is here too. Art took a particular interest in my dad, who's a dairy farmer. His dairy farm is about 6 miles from here. Art told my dad that he wanted to spend a day with him and learn how a dairy farm operated. That never happened, but I would have loved to have seen Dr. J with some cow manure on his shoes. There are lots of people, through their careers or whatever, that come into contact with many others during their lifetime, but few make the impact that Art did on so many. And so I wonder, maybe you do too, how to possibly repay Art for all the things he did for us along the way. Well, I don't think that I could possibly repay him. His impact on me was priceless. I do think that I might change the word repay to that more contemporary phrase, pay it forward. By following Art's example of providing guidance and encouragement, showing respect for others, and helping others to thrive, I, or we, could honor his legacy by doing what he did so well. That's called emulating, and I think we could also refer to it as life imitating art. Suffice it to say, it would be a great way to practice the profession of pharmacy and to live life taught to us by our friend, Dr. J. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. I don't know. There we go. This is who I am, but this is so much more important about our friend Art. I stand before you today, deeply honored and immensely humbled to represent fellow WVU School of Pharmacy alumni from the decade of the 90s and to reflect on some very treasured memories of Dr. Art Jacknowitz. Thank you, Linda, for the invitation. I had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Arthur Jacknowitz about 30 years now, and like many others, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude for Art's significant contributions to ensuring my pharmacy education prepared me well for whatever practice setting I chose to pursue. In the next 5 minutes or so, I want to relay a couple of my most cherished memories of Art and also incorporate some of the comments I received from fellow classmates over the decade of the 90s. It's accurate to say that during the weeks leading up to my PharmD graduation in 1997, I was facing a challenge I could not have seen coming. Art's support, compassion, wisdom, and guidance saw me through an unbelievably difficult and stressful time. You see, Art's love for West Virginia University and the School of Pharmacy and all the students in that School of Pharmacy was matched only by his integrity, his character, and his dedicated leadership. He invested countless hours, as you've heard from so many people standing before me, listening to us, giving us advice, letting us just come into his office and, download sometimes, and always unwaveringly building trust. And in my case, and so many others, undoubtedly long-lasting, valued friendships. Leanne Ferris, from one class in the 90s, I wasn't as good as Kent to get the actual year Leanne graduated, but she referred to Art as one of her favorite teachers And she shared that she would be forever grateful to him for the kindness he showed to her and her family as her son was facing an extreme illness at the PICU, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit here at Ruby. Jason Cooper reflected on Art's guidance and advice, which resonates to Jason even to this day. Art shared with him strong advice and encouragement, as he did so many other students, to pursue a residency, as well as consider getting his PharmD degree and to complete such. Jason took that advice. He is now working with the PGY1 and PGY2 residents at the Medical University of South Carolina. And he credits all of that to Art's persistence in helping see him through. One of Art's finest qualities has to be his ability to have a tremendous impact on a student or a resident or a friend or a colleague's life, regardless of the amount of time that he had with each one of us. What an empathic servant leader and role model Art has been. The second memory I'll share is of a much lighter nature. In the years following both of my pharmacy school graduations in 92 and in 97 here at WVU, Art and I communicated often over email, telephone, snail mail, and occasionally Facebook, as well as face-to-face, and occasional tailgate parties prior to the WVU Mountaineer football games, and also during some continuing education conferences that we had the joy to share together. Art would inevitably enclose or present me with a copy of this photograph of the four of us in the class of 1997. And inevitably he would say something to the effect of, "Janice, I don't remember if I've given you a copy of this photograph before, but I really feel it's important that you have it." If you look really closely at this photograph, you'll see little trifolds here. Art was such an eloquent letter writer. And in each of the letters, and this isn't all of them, that he sent me, he would enclose a copy of that photograph. I think I have at least, this is not exaggeration, 15 copies of that photograph. You have to love him. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So the four of us, as your class, Kent, and your decades referred to him as Dr. J, the four of us, we could get away with, much more intimate, kind of familial term of endearment. We called Dr. Art Jacknowitz Uncle Artie. Each time we would say that, he would flash that genuine smile, get that twinkle in his eye, shake his head, and just chuckle. He tolerated a lot from our class. We all recognized, though, and appreciated Art's nurturing nature. Melissa Simmons Blair, let me go back. Melissa, in this big class, she shared with me how she always felt that we were much more than students to Art, and that he had a vested interest in all of our careers. I agree. And as a matter of fact, Art reached out to me ahead of one of his ROCI presentations in New York, and he asked if I'd consider sending him a description of just some of the paths my career had taken since graduation. I was honored. I tried to put it all into words for him. And so like I should say, Kent's path, I started out in hospital pharmacy and then did a multidisciplinary stint with a team in Columbus, Ohio and St. Pete, Florida, taking care of patients, peds and adults with pulmonary diseases. After that, I ended up in a career, non-traditional career in industry, in a field-based medical affairs team. And so Art, after this ROCI talk, in another eloquently written letter of thank you and acknowledgement, shared with me that he actually used some of what I had shared with him in his presentation. And always the encourager, he referred to my work as noteworthy. Parnaz Farid Strobel, right there. Parnaz described art as having a way of making one feel important and good enough. She went on to add that he always treated her with respect, first as a student and then as an alumni. When Parnaz was pregnant, learned that she was pregnant, and shared that news with Art, she was expecting twins. So Art said to her, "You never do anything the easy way, do you, Parnaz?" So Parnaz went on to tell me that every time she hears Art's name, she has to smile. Don't we all? Stephanie Garrett. It's easy to pick us out, right, when there's only 4 of us. But Stephanie Garrett shared that Art would find her at every ASHP annual meeting when she was in the personnel placement service, and he told her how proud of her he was. She went on to tell me that she realized how difficult this had to be for Art because so many other students and residents and friends were attending this large annual meeting. She finished up her comment stating that Art always went above and beyond. Agreed. As one of the pioneer post-BS PharmD classes, and I do this because he put that in some of his letters to me, we had the good fortune for Art to hood each one of the 4 of us at our graduation from PharmD school. Art was in his element, helping all of us to develop and thrive in his beloved profession of pharmacy. He celebrated accomplishments, small and large. He would mail me, as it sounds like he did you, not his articles, but he would mail me clippings from the Dominion Post, Morgantown's local newspaper, on the occasion that my brother, Frank Alderman, who also was a graduate of the School of Pharmacy in 1987, and later went on, or 1989, and later went on to graduate the WVU School of Medicine in 97, and still lives in the area. Art never failed to send me clippings. I cherish his dedication to just connectedness and celebrating everyone else's accomplishments. Art cared, Art networked, he advocated, and he gave of himself so much to so many. In June of 2016, Art and Linda and Mary Stamatakis, who at that time was serving as our interim dean for the School of Pharmacy, did a road trip of sorts up to Columbus, Ohio, to connect with some of the WVU School of Pharmacy alumni working in the Buckeye State. So you see this, it's small, but this picture, I have to credit to a person by the name of Jenna Morandi, who I don't know when Jenna graduated, but Jenna was there, and she posted this on Facebook. So if you haven't gone to Facebook and searched Art Jacknowitz, I encourage you to go because there's gazillions of pictures with his beloved Linda and so many others. So take the time and check that out if you can. My life has been enriched and changed forever for the better, for my years spent here in Morgantown, but most definitely by my paths crossing with Art's and the ultimate friendship that we cultivated and shared. Driving into Morgantown yesterday had a different feel than my last visit here in October. Art and I shared a table, along with you too, Bill, at the Erickson Alumni Center for the 28th Annual Fall Cancer Conference. The evening prior, October 11th to be exact, Art and Linda graciously welcomed us, my husband and me, my husband Paul and me, into their lovely home for an evening to enjoy some homemade apple crisp, coffee, and conversation. In true fashion, Art, with his big heart and his ever-guiding spirit, was outside awaiting our arrival that evening, flashlight in hand. to guide us to a parking spot near their home. At the close of the conference on the next day, Art walked with me to the parking lot, and he waited with me so that he could greet my husband, Paul, and wish us both safe travels on our trip back to Ohio. I want to thank you, Art. This is all for you. I want to thank you for your guidance and for being uniquely you and for caring so deeply and passionately for each and every one of us. I hope we continue to make you proud. I will forever value all your mentorship and strive to channel your empathy, leadership, and compassion in all I do. Toda Rabah. Ashley.
It is truly an honor to speak on behalf of the graduates of the 2000s about our beloved mentor, Dr. Jacknowitz. For those of you that don't know me, I graduated from the School of Pharmacy in 2009 and have been on faculty since 2010. Some of you may also recognize my name from the Caringbridge site, as I was the one who copied and pasted all of Linda's words and to keep everyone updated during Art's illness. Winnie the Pooh said, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." Pooh's statement is so true today as we say goodbye to a man that has been described by many through comments shared for this memorial on Facebook and on Caringbridge as inspirational, encouraging, kind, influential, supportive, welcoming, would go out of his way to help, a true mountaineer, and a man of great faith. Saying goodbye is hard to Art is indeed incredibly hard, but this room is full of lucky people who knew and loved him. I met Dr. Jacknowitz at WVU freshman orientation, where he became my official honors pre-pharmacy advisor. Immature and 18 years old, sitting in the mountain lair, I had no idea what an influence the man sitting next to me would have on both my personal and professional life. The first bit of advice Dr. Jacknowitz gave me was to calm down. And from the many comments submitted by others, I was not the first or the last student to receive that bit of advice from him. The second piece of advice was where he recommended I take an honors chemistry course. Although I had tested well enough to get into the course, I knew my high school chemistry background wasn't very strong. Well, I took the class, and my first exam was a 56%. So I immediately got on the PRT and headed to the Health Sciences Center to meet with Dr. Jacknowitz. He provided me the encouragement I needed to stay in the course and not give up pharmacy quite yet. As all of us know, I was only one of many who received this kind of encouragement and support. It almost seems like he could sense when someone needed encouragement or didn't have the confidence in themselves and knew how to give them the extra boost that they needed. I followed Dr. Jacknowitz's recommendation and remained in the pharmacy course and as a pre-pharmacy major. During that semester, I studied more than ever and pulled through with a B, which I found out later didn't actually ruin my chances of getting into pharmacy school. I grew tremendously during that time, both academically and personally. In that chemistry class, I made lifelong friendships, and most importantly, it's where I met my husband, Brian McMillan. So you might add Cupid to Art's impressive CV. My undergraduate advisee meetings with Art also included two of my best friends, Katie Frail, who's in the audience, Patty's daughter, and Caitlin McDowell. Caitlin was also encouraged by Art to take the same honors chemistry course and met her future husband there as well. You can see us all pictured here with Art right before entering pharmacy school, at national meetings, and at graduation. During these meetings, he would not only help us with our academic plans, but he was genuinely interested in us as individuals. He was always very organized, maintaining an individual folder of all of his advisees where he kept documents and notes about us. Dr. Jacknowitz's constant caring, concern, and dedication for not only me, but for all of his honor students is how Art initially found a special place in my heart. One thing that many of you probably realized during your interactions with Art is that he had a gift of making everyone he spoke with feel important and special. Well, as Dr. Jacknowitz had always assured us, all three of us got into pharmacy school. During pharmacy school, he continued to check on me to see how I was doing, and we met to discuss career options frequently. If I had expressed interest in any career path, Art would print off articles that he came across and leave them in my mailbox. If there was ever a city I mentioned traveling to, he would provide me an itinerary, including lodging, coupons, entertainment, and most importantly, dining options. Every time I met with him, I knew he genuinely cared about me, and he cared for others in my life. He always asked how my husband Brian was doing and tried to see if there was any way he could help him too, as Art had connections everywhere. Although Art made me feel special and cared for, it wasn't just me. He treated everyone he met just like this. Art had a great sense of humor. He even used his wit to provide constructive criticism. I will never forget seeing him right after I finished an exam before a scholarship ceremony later that night. He said to me, "I certainly hope you decide to change out of your pajamas before tonight." I was wearing typical student exam attire that included yoga pants and a homemade tie-dye t-shirt. I did have full intentions of showering and changing before the evening. He also wasn't shy when pointing out that a thank you note I had written him had a mistake crossed out in the notes. He also probably noticed that I didn't use a ruler to make sure my lines were straight like he did. Julie McDougall shared in her comments that he made her promise to take out her nose ring when she got into pharmacy school. Art wanted to make sure all of his advisees made a good impression on others. During my last year of school, it was time to make a decision on my career. Although teaching was never something I had considered prior to pharmacy school, because of my interactions with him and the other supportive faculty at the school, I was leaning towards a career in academia. He also had influenced Kristen Finley Sabota, Betsy Ellswick, Katie Farrell, Jeremy and Lisa Prunty, and likely many others' decisions to work in academia. Even though I wanted to pursue academia, I wasn't sure if it was the best decision since it required further training, and despite standing here right now, I've really never felt that comfortable with public speaking. After interviewing for residencies and considering my options, I obviously turned to my lifelong advisor, Dr. Jacknowitz, with a detailed spreadsheet outlining the pros and cons of each choice so that he could help me make my decision. However, after showing him that spreadsheet, he said, "Ashley, you've already made your decision. It's on this piece of paper. I don't need to tell you what to do because you already made the decision yourself." He was right. I had made a decision, but I needed his help to know that he would know I was right, and he knew the best advice was sometimes no advice at all. After completing residency training, I was fortunate enough to return to WVU to serve as faculty. At this point, Dr. Jacknowitz became Art. Some things remained the same, such as his open door policy and me eating all of the candy in his office, while other things changed, like him calling me a pain in the ass, or saying that I was forcing him into an early retirement. And I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have said any of those things to me if I was still a student. It was also during that time that he officially earned the title of my lifelong advisor. Art was there for me for many milestones in my adult life. While I don't remember what Art was saying during this picture from my wedding, I can tell from the facial expression and the posture that he was probably telling me how happy and proud he was. You all probably recognize this look from your personal experience, as Art was everyone's cheerleader. Art and Linda and our friends Patty and Larry visited us in the hospital right after Connor, our first son, was born. When Macy, my second child, was born, he called me, not on my cell phone, but on the hospital landline, to say congratulations and inform me he wasn't feeling well, so didn't want to visit. As soon as he felt better, he and Linda prepared a delicious meal and helped welcome our daughter Macy into the world. I was also fortunate enough to be there for a few of his important life events, including his retirement in 2012 and 50th wedding anniversary celebration last year. Art stayed on faculty 2 years after I started working at WVU. But as you know, he remained very active at the School of Pharmacy, University, and the WVU Art Museum even after retirement. He was always an integral part of the School of Pharmacy functions. Looking through all the pictures shared and posted of Art, it's easy to see that he loved where he did, where he worked, and made others around him happy. Here are a few pictures of him roaming the halls, attending athletic events, homecoming activities, and other happenings at WVU. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend an occasional football and basketball games with him, and sometimes he even took off his headphones to talk to me. For all of his life, he continued to advise me in his way, forwarding me emails about topics I taught, destinations I was traveling to, or professional information he thought I would benefit from. He was one of the first people I called when I needed professional advice, and he was always there offering his warm embrace when I needed it. He would even send me articles about birds, as he knew my husband is an avid bird watcher. The 2019 bird-themed calendar currently hanging in my home is from Art and still has the post-it note on the front that says, "For you and Brian." Even during his courageous battle with cancer, he continued continue to genuinely care for others. He always asked visitors how their families were doing. My family took a vacation on the Pacific Coast Highway in California, and he was planning our trip by pulling out brochures from his folders for us, sending me emails about things to do, and wanted to hear all about our trip. While he was actively receiving his first dose of chemotherapy, he emailed my husband, who is an eye doctor, to help one of his former students who was having eye complications. This is just one of the many ways Art was a connector and always trying to help others, even during his illness. He and Linda had so many people reaching out to them in their time of need, just as they have been there reaching out to all of us all along, and we heard more of those stories today. The number of letters and cards they received during this time is a testament to the lives that Art and Linda touched. There's nothing I could ever do, and Kent and I kind of had the same thoughts with this, to ever repay Art for all that he has given to me. But I do hope to be able to pay his love and encouragement forward, and I hope that you all will do the same. He was a cheerleader for so many, including those that didn't have confidence in themselves. He always took time to get to know others and find out ways to help them. Through my job, I've had the opportunity to help with new student orientation just down the hall from where I met Art 16 years ago. In this role, I speak to incoming freshmen about pre-pharmacy at WVU and help them select classes just as Art did for me. In a little over a week, I will start to help the current honors advisor, Matt Blumel, advise pre-pharmacy students in the honors program. Even though I know I will never have Art's special talent, I hope to be able to provide students with the support and encouragement that he provided to me and so many others. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. Although impressive, we may forget many of Art's accomplishments. We will never forget the way he made us feel."
Hello. Art was my colleague and dear friend, really since 1982, when he picked me up at the Morgantown Airport for my interview here and took me to their house for dessert with Linda. And I can honestly say the only thing that I remember from that particular evening, because I had taken 2 Dramamine because I don't like to fly, is thinking to myself, where am I and who are these people? But honestly, I am glad I have come and really got to know them. A former colleague, Jim Stevenson, said the following qualities came to mind when he was thinking about Art. And he said his good humor, his mentoring, his kindness, and his commitment to those around him. And I think that summarizes Art very well. He was an excellent department chair. He knew what some administrators fail to realize, that you succeed when the people under you succeed. He started the Drug Information Center and was here at the start of the Poison Center. And he was mine and Dr. Elizabeth Sharma's greatest supporters and cheerleaders when those centers succeeded through our work. Many of the faculty, whoops, I'll show you here. Okay. Are people who are born in different places. We came from elsewhere and we made West Virginia our home. But Art knew that, we're all West Virginians. Regardless of where we're from, he welcomed diversity. And so regardless of where you were born or where you went to school, Art considered you to be all West Virginians. And I will say that Art was a Brooklynite and he was transplanted to West Virginia, but I think really developed into a hybrid that made both places better, which I think is very important too. He never lost the Brooklyn in him, which I think was a big plus. And then, a colleague once said, they were kind of amazed at how long Art and I worked together and how well we got along together for so many years. And, we do have our differences. I mean, Art's Jewish, I'm Catholic. He's an extrovert, I'm an introvert. But I think the things that we shared was we had sort of a mutual trust and respect for each other, even when we disagreed. And also, I think we both loved WVU and the School of Pharmacy from really differing perspectives. I think Art knew that my work with the school, which tended to focus on the curriculum and also the program, which you might expect from an introvert, was always my priority. And I knew that Art, his priorities were the people, WVU and the School of Pharmacy, from the people perspective. The faculty, the staff, the students, the alumni, and that was always his priority. And I think the two really work together very well. So many people had mentioned when they think of Art, they think of his humor and quick wit. And those are the first things that I think of when I think of Art. So what I'd like to do is spend the rest of the time and just share with you some little anecdotes and stories from our times together. Okay, and some of these things many people mentioned before, but when you walked with Art down a hall, he knew everybody, almost everybody. He had a fantastic memory for telephone numbers when I first started working here, and literally you could almost mention a name and he could rattle off that person's phone number for almost anywhere in the Health Sciences Center, and that was just something he could do. He loved travel. Art saved and filed, okay, all the travel sections from the New York Times. So if you were going to a meeting in Pocatello, Idaho, Art would come in the next day with things to do in Idaho. I mean, he really had all these things. He could take a newspaper article that was big, you know, and be able to photocopy it in little easy to read sections that you could, you know, easily refer to. So he frequently gave, the New York Times was also Art's favorite information resource. And he often gave faculty articles from the New York Times in various areas. Dr. Ron Gaskins, who was a GI specialist here who has since retired, sent the following comment, and I quote, he said, "Knowing of my interest in horological items," and I have to admit I needed to look that word up. It's H-O-R-O, by the way, logical items. It means study of the measure of time. And so he goes on to say, and I quote, "Each year when the New York Times annual watch section was published, Art would bring it to my office and share it with me. Even after I moved, he continued to forward the publication." Another colleague, Mark Leclerc, a philosophy professor and bioethics expert, said that Art, quote, "regularly sent me relevant articles related to pharmacy that contributed to my research. He was a genuine mensch." And me, the Catholic, had to look that one up too. And it said, "a person of integrity and honor." Art often assisted colleagues in booking travel to meetings. Once Art arranged travel plans for he, Charlie, Ponte, and I to go to a meeting out west. He made the reservations and then told us that we were flying through New York City. And so Charlie and I said, did it really make sense to fly out west through New York? But Art said he got a good deal. And I don't know if Mel remembers this, but Art said that we had a few-hour layover in New York, and he was calling his brother Mel to see if he could meet us at the airport, take us to a real New York deli for lunch, which he did. And we had a great time. When flying, okay, Art would look for the little metal plate, and I don't know if you pay attention to this. When the door was open on a plane and you're walking in, they oftentimes had a little plate like you would have on the side of your car door, and it would have the year the plane was made. So when we were going on airplanes, Art would stop in the entrance and look for the plate, and he would say things like, "Oh, this plane was made in 1996, to see if it was an old plane or not that he was flying on." And ever since then, I still look for the metal plates on those airplanes. Okay, if you went to Art to a meeting, and I think Patty mentioned museums, he always checked in advance to see if there were interesting things to see or do. So once we were going to Kansas City, and Art said he read about a steamboat museum, and he said, "But I'd like to go with him." And my first thought was steamboat museum. But it actually was the highlight of the trip. I mean, they had artifacts from a steamboat that sank in the 1800s, and it was really very interesting. Art was good at delegating. On one trip to Las Vegas, Art, David, Elliot, Charlie, and I rented a car and drove into the desert to look at a state park. Art tried to bring rental cars back with as low a fuel as possible if he had to pay for it in advance. So basically, as we were driving, Charlie kept, thinking. Charlie would look at the gas gauge and said, "We're running low on fuel," and Art would say, "No, we're fine." And so we would just keep going, and Charlie was getting more nervous, saying, we're getting really low on fuel. And finally Charlie said, if we run out of gas, I am not walking to get fuel. So Art told David, he said, David, you're the official gas gauge watcher. He said, look at the gauge and tell me if we're okay with fuel. So every so often, Art would turn to David and said, David, how are we on gas? And David would look over and say, looking good. So we actually made it barely with enough fuel. Art loved to shop, and he did at meetings. If he saw a Disney store, okay, he always wanted to go in because he loved to look at the Disney characters. I'll mention that a little bit later or something else. Okay, he also had a wonderful ability to break up tense situations with some amusing remark that usually worked well. Okay, there was one memorable car trip from Charleston with my first department chair this was Art, Charlie, and me again, and he had a very bad and really unpredictable temper. So he was driving and almost ran into the car in front of us as we were leaving Charleston. And Art made a witty comment. All I remember is something about hood ornament and bumper of the car in front of us. And to which our department chair just exploded. So Art really tried to calm things down for the rest of the trip. About every 15 minutes, Art would say, pull over here, I'll drive, in which he was ignored. So Art would keep saying, you can get off at the exit here, I'll drive. And Art was pretty persistent about that. Okay. Another memorable thing is Art infrequently, at least at work, showed anger or frustration. But there was a memorable continuing education trip that we took. We would give continuing education talks to small groups throughout West Virginia. And for this trip, Art and I were invited to speak at the Spencer State Hospital, which was a very large psychiatric institute in Spencer, West Virginia, about 3 hours from here, since demolished. It's no longer here. So I was talking about drug information resources. Art was talking about Alzheimer's disease. And we had a lot of slides. Okay, at that time there wasn't PowerPoint. So I had slides. Art had lots of slides with Alzheimer's disease, looking at neurons and the pathophysiology of the disease. They're talking to medical staff, right? Okay, so when we arrived, the woman who arranged it met us and apologetically said, I'm really sorry, but she forgot to tell the medical staff that we were coming. So there were no doctors available. So both of us, of course, were a little annoyed because we drove 3 hours to get there. And so the woman said, don't worry, I'll get people. So literally she ran out, and anyone she could find who would go to the talk, she got, but none of them were health professionals. So she had, there was a telephone operator and there was a custodian. And so we had these people, okay, sitting in the room. So I asked Art, what are we gonna do? Because my talk, really, I didn't feel I could give it to lay people. There was nothing in it that really anyone could relate to other than a health professional. And Art said, after working on the talk, I'm gonna give my talk. And I thought, and I told Art, well, okay, that could work. I mean, if you cut out the slides of the neurons and if you water it down a little bit, then I think it'll be okay. And Art said, no, I spent the time, we drove this way, I'm gonna give the talk exactly as I wrote it. And I thought this might not go well. Okay, and so I have to kind of set the stage for you. It was a warm summer day, sunny. It was the ground floor, there was no air conditioning. They had the windows open, okay? And they had these long tables. There was a woman who was sitting in the table by herself in front of Art. And then there were maybe 20 or so people scattered around the room. So Art starts talking, and then about halfway through his talk, the woman who was sitting in front literally puts her head down on the table and falls asleep, okay? And then to make it worse, it gets worse, okay? Then a few minutes later, she started snoring, okay? And Art kept talking, okay? And then when you thought it couldn't get any worse, a man outside started cutting the lawn with a power mower. So Art finished his talk with the woman snoring and the power mower outside, and he just kept going and finished it. So it was pretty good. So Art hand-wrote, back to work, Art hand-wrote his correspondence for the secretaries to type. And one of our faculty, Lena Maynor, said that Art would reply to emails by printing them out, writing the comments, and putting them in her mailbox. Art worked almost every weekend. And what he would do is he would write all his correspondence and he'd leave them in rows on the secretary's desk. So when they came in Monday morning, they'd have all these things piled up. Our current secretary, Celissa, said that the first day of work, Art had lined up her desk with all these things to type. And he said, kind of jokingly, it was a test to see if she could read his handwriting, because as people commented, he wrote, and when you write with a ruler, it makes all the bottoms of your letters flat, so they can get kind of hard to distinguish from each other. Okay, and one last story I wanted to, two last quick stories. Art served as curator for years, in addition to his other faculty responsibilities, co-curator of the Cook Heyman Pharmacy Museum. In our school, if you look at the top corner in the background with all the drugs, that's part of the museum in the background, with John Mauger, Dr. John Mauger initially, bottom right, okay, second from the right, and later Clark Ridgway, who's kind of the second from the left photo on the right. John was a dear friend, a longtime colleague of Art's, and I must say, and this gets back to the stuffed animals from Disney, I know that John is also a collector of teddy bears, so they had something else that was in common there. But they worked hard to make the museum an interesting historical site, and as a result, it was listed on national travel maps. So they had busloads of visitors, literally, who would be coming to the museum, often seniors, with Art and John initially serving as the tour guides, and then later Clark. Art frequently spent time escorting people to restrooms, with the group. And John's told the story of one time he and Art were tour guides, and there was an elderly woman who asked him for a sewing kit. And they said, the museum didn't have sewing kits. And they said, why did you need that? And she apparently turned to the man behind her and said, apparently he had a torn zipper that, according to John, left a rather embarrassing gap in the front of his trousers. And the woman said, any respectable pharmacy always had a sewing kit. So they provided a safety pin, and John and Art, being conscientious, the next day went out, bought sewing kits for the museum. And John said they were never again asked for a sewing kit for the museum. Okay, and so in closing, I just want to leave for you one last brief story that I think will leave you with a smile about Art. And you could probably envision Art saying this. And this was about, not that long ago, maybe a year or so ago. Art and I were on a flight, and one of the athletic coaches happened to be on the flight with us. And Art told me that he never liked to fly with a coach. And why? Because he said, if the plane crashed, he said the newspaper headline the next day in big type would read, football or basketball coach killed in plane crash. And then he said, at the bottom in small type, it would say, 2 pharmacy faculty also died. So thank you very much.
There's a land rolling mountains where the sky is blue above. And though I may roam, I hurry home to the friendly hills I love, where the moonlit meadows ring with the call of whippoorwills. Always you will find me in my home among the hills, and where the sun draws rainbows in the midst of waterfalls and mountain rills. My heart will be always in the west, Virginia hills. Their autumn hillsides are bright with scarlet trees, and in the spring the robins sing, while apple blossoms whisper in the breeze. And there is music in the flashing streets, with joy in fields and daffodils, laughter through the happy valleys of my home amongst the hills.
Please join me here at the bottom of page 3 for Psalm 23. Adonai is my shepherd. I lack nothing. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me to water in places of repose. God renews my life. God guides me in right paths as befits God's name. Though I walk through a valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My drink is abundant. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai for many long years. Please rise if you are able for Kaddish on the back page. The Kaddish does not mention death. It's just an elaborate praise of God. But it is to the credit of our departed loved ones that we say these words with them in mind. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, va'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, va'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mavarach la'alam ul'almei almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh v'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'emru. Amen. Please be seated. And the final words of the Kaddish, we can sing them. Please join along if you know it. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'emru, ve'emru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'emru, ve'emru, amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru, ve'imru, amen. Thank you for participating in this memorial service for Art Jacknowitz. The correct thing to say to mourners is, Hamakom yenachem etchem b'toch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May the one who is everywhere comfort you, along with those who mourn for Zion and Jerusalem. And together we say, Amen.
How wonderful it is to look out and to see so many familiar faces. Thank you so much. So many of you have been together with us to celebrate happy occasions, and now to be with me and our family, now to remember Art. I'm here right now as Art's proxy. Many of you know that on West Virginia University's 150th birthday, the university created a limited number of special coins. They were celebration coins that were tokens of appreciation for the hardworking employees who embodied WVU values of service, curiosity, respect, accountability, and appreciation. And people who went above and beyond to make our community, the state, the world a better place. Only 150 of these special coins were struck, and schools got a few coins each to give out to special people, to recognize special people. And in our School of Pharmacy, because it's my School of Pharmacy too, we recognized Mary Stamatakis and Angela Frame, and also Brenda Higa. Three wonderful people who certainly deserve the honor. Now, these honorees were then encouraged to keep their eye out for other WVU employees who also exhibited these special values, and to pay it forward. They were given duplicate coins that they could then give to somebody in recognition of those same values. In the last few days of Art's life, he actually received one of these coins from a colleague. Dr. Terry Schwinghammer, who followed Art as chair of the school's clinical pharmacy department, sent Art a coin. And in his letter, Terry wrote, "You left a legacy of departmental collegiality, mentoring, and friendship. I can think of no one who embodies these WVU values more than you. It has been my honor and privilege to be your colleague and friend, and I will cherish the memories of our time together." Well, today it is my honor and privilege to act as Art's proxy and to gift his coin forward. I want to gift it forward as Art would have wanted to gift it forward, to a colleague he admired, he respected, and more importantly, he loved, Dr. Maria Bate. Please join me, Marie. Art wanted me to tell you how much he admired and respected you for all your contributions to WVU, the school, and to the state. Thank you, Lily.
I made it through everything else without crying, and now you do. But I really appreciate it.
Again, I look forward. I look forward to being with you downstairs at the reception, and thank you all so much for coming today.
Well, I'm the final act, so there's not much more to go. I want to say that very infrequently are you at an event that is perfect. I believe this is one of those few events. Linda, thank you for sharing the force of nature that we knew as Art Jacknowitz. Art is, if nothing else, very authentic. So I'm the person who oversees all the health side of WVU. And one of the duties that I have had in my 4 years back here is to help choose the dean of the School of Pharmacy. And Mary Stamatakis did an amazing job as the interim. And then we went through the search process. And so I went to meet with the school, and sitting in the seat right beside me was Art. And so Art looked at me and kind of studied me over, and he says, "You better get this one right." And so we went through several meetings and several candidates, and we didn't get a dean on the first round. And Art met me in my office as I walked back to the office, and he looked at me and he said, "I think you'll have to do better." And I said, "Well, I'm trying." And he said, "Well, let me help you." And he said, "I am with you every step of the way. I want this to be the candidate who is going to lead our school into the future." And he was my chief advisor, as he has been for many other people in his life. And finally, we came up with Bill Petros as a dean of pharmacy. And after we selected Bill, Art came back and visited me, and he says, "You may be okay." So Art is a wonderful friend, professor, doctor, mentor, researcher, arts lover. He channeled love everywhere he was. You could feel it when he was around. So Bill and I thought, how could we memorialize Art? Because certainly the people in the room will have Art live forever, and the people they touch. This sort of eternity is really about the people that you touch and the love and the impact that you leave behind. And for him, he was like the biggest pebble ever in the river of all of our lives, with the ripples that continue to go out. But we thought, next slide, we thought that we would create in the Health Science Center a wall of art. And we would celebrate both his commitment to this university, which has been great, and wanted to make that lasting. And because of his love for the art museum, we have dedicated a space on the back hallway, right outside the pylons area, that will house artwork that will change fairly frequently to be able to give people the best experience for the art that this university holds. So when you go down today to join us for the celebration and some refreshments, please go out there. We've got it started. It's the journey of 1,000 miles, as the philosopher Lotze said. But I think this will be something that will maintain and exist long after all of us are gone too. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for the wonderful comments by all the speakers. It was incredibly touching. I feel like I know Art much better from what everybody said. And I would just say, for me at the university level, the love that Art had for this university and the love that Art has for the people in the room is a lasting legacy and is the perfect end to this celebration. So thank you.